How you going, guys? Today I thought I'd do a video on, tips and tricks on how to start a wrestle. A lot of people get nervous starting wrestles, and a lot of people just don't know how to start a wrestle. But first thing that you've got to remember with jiu-jitsu, which is super important when it comes to wrestling and starting wrestles, is it's only jiu-jitsu. So it doesn't matter if we win or lose. It doesn't matter if we do something wrong. And let's try not to get too worried about all those questions we ask ourselves. Because when we come to jiu-jitsu, most of the people we do jiu-jitsu with, we've been doing it for a really long time. And generally speaking, most people in that gym are really safe people. And for those people in the gym that you're not comfortable wrestling with, you have this right. And that right is, as a white belt, blue belt, doesn't matter. You say no. Even if you think one of the black belts is really tough and they hurt you, all right, you can say no, because jiu-jitsu, yeah, we've got to learn, but we've got to feel safe too, all right? Because, it is dangerous and intimidating. But in saying that, what I'm going to show you today is just kind of some tricks and moves that I use to start a wrestle. Makes me comfortable, and it also is confusing for them, hopefully. So to start with, we'll start sitting down here. And generally in most gyms, we sit down, they go time, ready, go. We tap hands, boom, and we're off, okay? So first thing, before any jiu-jitsu begins, is I want to be starting in this technical stand-up position. It's not because of self-defense, it's just because it's so good. So if Jazz goes to grab my wrist, I can swat, That's the first thing. But more importantly, I'm going to be sitting here like this, and Jazz is going to be working out what entry she's going to take. Whether she's passing on this side, whether she's going to try and get like a half guard on the front foot, or something like that. So why this is so good is that this is primarily good for right-handers, and then I'm going to switch. And now her whole approach is changing, all right? And then I'm going to switch again, and I can move to my left, and I can come across and cut the angle, and I can do the same forward, I can go backwards, and I can do all that butt scooting and that stuff in this self-defense position that you can do. Now, when it comes to the start of a wrestle, we're not talking about techniques, flying triangles, whatever. What we're talking about is the beginning where you can get the upper hand. So the first thing to say is, if you're an attacker, just attack. Don't get caught up in the questions. If you're a white belt getting nervous about wrestling a black belt, you're meant to lose to that black belt. And if you're a new white belt, that black belt in most gyms will look after you. So they'll do things to help you, be challenged, and they might tap you out 5 times the same way, and then afterwards say, look, you should have put your hand up. That's why I tapped you out that way so many times. But the thing is, we want to make sure that when we're wrestling, if you're aggressive and you want to attack. That's cool. If you're a counter fighter and you want to wait. If you're having those serious wrestles, you do your technique and you do your psyche in regard to how you're going to fight. But with a wrestle, it generally starts at the wrist or at the ankle. And then it moves to the knee control. And then it moves to the elbow control, and then so on to the body. So an example of that is, Jazz grabs the wrist there. So she's got my wrist. So many people here, my sleeve, so many people leave this grip here. And we want to get rid of it. So strip that grip. Now we're neutral. She gets the sleeve again. Now she's got an advantage. Now if I've got her sleeve, now we're neutral again. Okay? So it's that kind of situation. Now when it progresses to the elbow, for instance, maybe I leave this here, I'm stupid, man, what am I doing? Now she might arm drag me. And now she's got my elbow, and look at her right hand here. It's right near my shoulder. Okay, she's going to take my back, all right? So we want to nullify that that progression. We don't want her to go from the sleeve to the elbow, to the shoulder, to the back. So as soon as it starts here, she grabs my sleeve, strip that grip, strip it. I don't know, you would have watched many tournaments, or if you're really new, you might not have. Might have watched YouTube. We got 2 black belts, right? And they're here. And it's like 4 minutes of this, and they're going like this. And they're going in here, and Jazz swats me, and I'm going boom. I swat her, and nothing happens, and it's really boring. Because they're trying to prevent this bit, which is the advantage for the other person. All right? So that's a little group of tricks there that can really help you enter your wrestle. So the other thing is I'm a really big counter fighter. Now, if I'm wrestling with someone that I'm taking quite seriously because I want to learn and I want to train, and I really feel like I want to play my game and I'm a counter fighter, I always wait for what they're doing, okay? And I have a system for that. So if they're not doing anything, guess what I'm going to do? What am I going to do? I'm going to do nothing, and I'm going to wait. Just like an aggressive person, or not an aggressive person, or just like an attacking person is going to attack. So they're going to attack. Now, that's cool. I'm just going to wait. And then by the end of it, even other counter fighters will probably attack. So there you go. I've kind of dictated the terms of the wrestle, all right? So now when it comes to standing up, if I'm here and we've tapped hands and we're ready to go, and I look at Jazz, and yeah, Jazz is an adult, by the way, she's in her 20s, we kept an orange belt because of our school here, but she might be an orange belt or a white belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Cool. She could be a black belt in Judo. Let's say she isn't a black belt, but let's say she is. She's a black belt in Judo. I am not going to stand up with her. No friggin' way. Because I'm not a black belt in Judo. So I'm just not going to do it. But if I do want to stand up, I want to dictate the terms. So I want to maybe, when I stand up, come forward, and if she presents as a counter fighter and she falls back a little bit, I might want to stand up then, okay, because she's going backwards. So if she's coming forwards and I stand up, I'm asking for a guard pull, or I'm asking for X guard, or whatever, you know, it doesn't really matter. So it's about those finer things that really kind of give you a little bit more of an advantage. Another thing I do when I stand up is I play handsies here and they play handsies back with strip grips. But as we're doing that, I kind of just put my foot on their foot and I push their shin. And as I do that, right, I come in to do that, not just hit them or something like that. And I put my foot there. And in that kind of split second, as I go, boom, here, I'm going to stand up. And that foot's kind of, just for that little timing split second, that foot's taken away and they're going to go backwards. And that's what I want them to do, all right? So that's another little tip. So if you stand up now, so let's say, not a judo black belt, really good, Dave's safe-ish, but she's really friggin' strong. So what I want to be doing is, I don't want to be in her face here unless I dictate the terms for this, because she's just going to take me down and that's not going to be good for Dave. So if I'm sort of playing with what I want and the angles that I want, what I always want to be is more than a hand away from her. Okay, and if I'm taller than her, let's look at our size. If I'm taller than Jazz, if I'm more than a hand away from her, then she's really probably not going to make a shot on me, because she's actually shorter than me. If she puts her hand out now to try and touch my head, it's quite a lot further away because she actually stepped forward. But these little things we've got to look at. We can actually get a little closer than this to Jazz and be a little bit safer, okay, from the front foot. So when we're standing, another little tip, is just simple things. If I'm lower than her, it's really difficult for her to take me down if I stuff up, because my center of gravity is further down. If she goes lower than me, I'm going to go lower than her. All right? And so on. My son who used to compete, he'd stand upright and he'd be really like this, you know, and it's so good. They'd go low and he'd go lower, and they'd go low and then he'd sit down. And when they're there, he'd shoot in and grab half guard, you know. So for me with jiu-jitsu, it's about prevention. If I can prevent Jazz getting me, that's a self-defense angle, then I'm going to have an advantageous position when I get hurt. All right. So there's some like tips and just some little ideas for your jiu-jitsu game. But really, really remember that in jiu-jitsu, you don't have to be nervous about starting a wrestle. You might be, but you don't have to be. No one there's going to hurt you. And it's also a safe place for you to do your form of winding down from a day or a week. So just try and remember those things. And like always with any nerves, have a chat with yourself, breathing, make sure you're drinking water, eating right, those kinds of things. And that also helps leading up to being nervous with jiu-jitsu. But just remember too, the person you're wrestling is probably nervous too. So they're nervous about you, you're nervous about them. So it's two people worrying about the other person who's not even really worried about themselves at all. So it's just like, so, you know, they're just worried about themselves. So jiu-jitsu is about fun. You win, you lose, and that's all good. Doesn't matter if you win in your lunchbox on these mats, because you can go to another set of mats in another country and get absolutely flogged. So, you know, don't get caught up in winning and losing. It's such a relative thing, because yeah, just look after yourself, look after your journey, and remember that jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu. So I hope those tips and tricks kind of help. Give them a go, and if they suck, don't use them ever again. It's all good. All right, hope it helps.